Hey, it's been kind of a crazy week, and this week's not going to get any less crazy. And I don't have much time. But rather than not recording a Telltale Tuesday at all, I decided to record a fast one. And hopefully I'll be able to throw in a bonus one for Thursday as well to make up for this being a fast one. You might notice a difference in backgrounds because I'm not caved away in my little basement studio. Instead, I'm in the woods near my house. A woods that has a farm off to one side and a road off to the other. There's some natural sound effects today. There's going to be the sound of the wind. There's the sound of a pond full of frogs who are behind me. There's also going to be sounds of passing cars and, if we're really lucky, my neighbor's chainsaw ripping through a fallen tree. But today, this background seemed appropriate to me because I'm going to be talking about the great god Pan. Now, Hermes had taken for one of his wives a nymph. And in Greek myth, the nymphs were nature spirits. They were female. There were nymphs that lived in trees. There were nymphs that lived in rivers and ponds. They were the nature spirits that surrounded everyone and everything. They were very minor goddesses. And Hermes wasn't alone in taking one of these nymphs to be his wife. And there were male counterparts to the nymphs as well. The satyrs and the centaurs. Now the centaurs, you've probably seen them in movies and stories. The centaurs had the bodies of horses, but where the neck of a horse would start, the horse ended, and instead it would be a man from the waist up. And then there were also the satyrs, who in Roman mythology were called fauns. And they were, instead of being part horse, they were part goat. And they were man from the waist up, except they very often had ugly goat-like faces and goat's horns and the beard of a goat. And from the waist down, they had the hindquarters of a goat. Just the two legs, not the four, but furry, tail, hooves, the whole thing. Now that's not who Hermes married, although Hermes does have a tendency to have some unusual offspring. And today's topic is one of those. Hermes had taken a nymph, a nature spirit, a minor goddess, to be his wife. And she was proud that Hermes, the brave, clever, dashing god, had chosen her. And she became pregnant, and that made her even more proud that she was going to have the child of an Olympian. And she was up in Mount Olympus when she gave birth. And when the other goddesses handed her bundle of boy to her, she screamed, dropped the baby, and ran out of the room. Hermes heard the scream and came running in, and he snatched the baby before it could hit the ground. And he saw the baby, and he saw why the goddess, the nymph, had screamed, but instead of screaming, he laughed. Because this was the ugliest baby Hermes had ever seen in all of his long, long life. It had a pudgy little baby body, but instead of those cute little pudgy baby legs, goat tail. It had little horns already budding out of its baby forehead, and it even had a beard on its chin. This is one of the all-time ugliest babies ever, and Hermes thought it was hilarious. So hilarious that he kept the baby, and he took care of the baby on his own after the mother ditched, took off, and was never seen again at Mount Olympus. And he named this goat boy Pan, which in Greek isn't something that you cook in. It is the Greek word for everything. Now, Pan was the child of an Olympian. He was a god. But in a lot of ways, he's sort of forgotten or set aside. He's that goat guy. He did not live on Mount Olympus. He spent almost no time on Mount Olympus. Instead, he lived down on Earth with the rest of us. And he lived in the countryside, the forests, the wild areas. And he became the god of shepherds and of the wilderness and of the wild things. Where Pan is literally where the wild things are. And Pan hangs out with the nymphs and the centaurs and the satyrs, and he parties all night long. And he plays his signature instrument, the panpipes or the pan flute. And one day he actually got into a musical competition with Apollo, god of music, and that led to problems, but that's a story for another day. But Pan, god of the wilderness, was known for partying and having a great time with the other wild things. However, there were times when Pan may have been feeling wild, but he was not feeling like partying. Because Pan's moods would swing. And sometimes he was the life of the party. And he would dance and sing and play music. And other times, he grew horribly sad or angry, and he would withdraw. He would withdraw to the dark places in the woods, to the caves, to the thick of the forest. And he would still play music, but his music took a different tone. And instead of being music that made you want to dance, the sound of his music would fill your heart with mindless fear and dread. And if you did not pay attention to the warning of that music and you got too near and you disturbed Pan in his sadness or in his slumber, he would roar out with a horrible, horrible shriek. And that would be the last straw. You would just be filled with fear and you'd run in mindless terror. The mindless terror that we today call panic. And Pan is where we get that word. Panic. And Pan, if you dig deeper into him, is kind of interesting. Because like I said, a lot of people just sort of ignore him as that goat guy. But if you think about the meaning of his name, Pan, everything. He was the god of everything outside the cities. And if you live in a city, it's kind of easy to think that the city is everything. But if you take a step back, and even now you look at the world and see how much of the world is not city, is not even town, it's just open, wild places. That is most of the world. And back in the times of ancient Greece, it was even more so. Pan was not minor. Pan was the god of everything outside the cities. He was not a minor thing to be laughed at. And the more you dig into him, it's kind of interesting because either Pan shows up in a lot of stories in a lot of different ways, or there is actually more than one Pan. Sometimes he's the son of Hermes. Sometimes he's a foster brother of Zeus. He shows up in lots of different ways. And there are times, depending on the stories you listen to, where he is the key player. He is the one who helps turn the tide of battle with his roar, his terrible panic-inducing shout. And that is Pan. He is the god of the wild places, of everything outside the city. And like I said, it's a short one this week, but I will see if I have the time to add the story of Echo and Narcissus as a Thursday bonus. And then next week, I will do Dionysus, the god of hardcore partying. And that will actually wrap up all of the Olympians. And from there, I will go on to the stories of heroes, of Perseus and Medusa, Theseus and the Minotaur, Orpheus and the trip down into the underworld. To quote the Disney movie Hercules, a lot of yesses. And after I cover those guys, I'll get into the 12 labors of Heracles, who is better known by that Roman name, Hercules. Now that'll take me a little while to get through, and after that, I think I'll actually move north and start on the stories of the Norsemen. But until then, if you can, get out and enjoy some of those wild places. It's good for the soul. Talk to you later. Bye.